Along with Halloween, October is also a time to remember loved ones who are no longer with us. That's why hundreds celebrated at the annual Dia de los Muertos Festival with food, music, and of course, art. One of the art projects, Dia de los Niños Genios, was created by 40 schools. And some people shared what the holiday means to them and why those who are gone are never forgotten.
It's more sentimental because you lost your loved ones and stuff like that, so this means a lot to me.
Dia de los Muertos is celebrated every year from October 31st to November 2nd. Tonight's festival will go on until midnight.
Heavyweight champion, Pitbull!
Luchador wrestling was just one of the many Hispanic culture aspects of the night, with world-famous luchadores performing a complex set of stunts for Lucha Kaboom. 3 jam-packed matches were held. One of them included a Victory Pro wrestler, Lucha Libre.